The following is produced by 5 Star Productions USA, which is solely responsible for its editorial content.
You feel it coming. You know it's going to happen again. Your heart pounds. You gasp for air. You think you're going to die. Panic disorder. It's not all in your head. It's in your brain, and it's a treatable disease. Explore the causes, the symptoms, and the solutions when we get right to the heart of matters affecting your life. Today, on Today's Health.
Imagine standing in a crowd. Suddenly you feel trapped. Your heart starts pounding wildly. You can't breathe. You think you're going to die. You panic. Minutes later, all the symptoms go away. Some people tell you it's all in your head, but it's not. It could be panic disorder. Hello, I'm Faith Daniels. Welcome to another edition of Today's Health. It may start with a panic attack, and then the fear that it will happen again can grow and constrict your life. Panic disorder is a common mental illness, a biochemical disease that may make you a prisoner of your own anxiety.
This is no time to panic. We've all heard those words, but for people who suffer from panic disorder, it's a real fear. It can make them so afraid to go out that they become prisoners, captives of their own anxiety.
I fear death every day. That's the irony of the anxiety disorder. You're fearing something that you can't put your finger on it. You can't say why it's happening. Why do I feel this way?
A panic disorder is one of the anxiety disorders in which a person manifests certain physiologic and psychological symptoms which interfere with the quality of life. The symptoms include palpitations, shortness of breath, tremulousness, sweating, a sense of impending doom, even dizziness.
The symptoms usually last 6 months or more, in some cases maybe years or even decades. What's unfortunate is many people go this long period of time without attempting to get appropriate treatment for the condition.
People that are stricken with panic attacks, more than 80% go to either the emergency room or their primary care doctor before they seek the help of a mental health care professional.
About 10% of us will experience a panic attack in our lifetimes, but for the 3 million people with panic disorder, the attacks occur at least monthly, and the anxiety that an attack will strike is constant.
You were alive, breathing, but you weren't enjoying your life. You weren't doing anything in this life. You might as well have been dead from the heart attack you worried about, from the seizure, from the embolism, from the busted whatever, because all those fears were there. But you might as well have been dead from one of them because you weren't living.
The onset of panic disorder is usually in the early 20s, and it affects nearly twice as many women as men.
A high percentage of people with persistent anxiety, anywhere from 20 to 90%, may have another psychiatric condition or disorder such as depression.
The combination of a panic disorder and depression usually becomes severe enough where it affects the person's quality of life. The patient is feeling out of control. Therefore, one must evaluate for suicide.
If you think you may have panic disorder, don't panic, get help. There are therapies and medications that can block panic attacks in 70 to 90% of cases. And once you get rid of the fear, you'll see there's plenty of hope.
Many people with panic disorder know that it's hard for others to understand their anxiety. A panic attack may be triggered by the brain, but it propels the body through actual symptoms similar to a heart attack or suffocation. You can feel you're going to die, and it's terrifying.
Actually, it all began in college. I was working on campus, and all of a sudden I couldn't breathe. My throat had closed up, and I was breathing heavy, my heart was palpitating, and I panicked.
A panic attack usually has a crescendo effect, meaning it builds, peaks, and fades out very quickly. But it doesn't feel that way. To the patient, it's possibly the worst feeling in the world.
You're conscious of your breathing. You're conscious of your pulse. Is it going too fast? Is it going too slow? It was the fear of the anxiety attack. And of course, that fear of the anxiety attack, you didn't know it was that. You thought it was a fear that I'm having the heart attack this time. I must have had 200,000 heart attacks. My liver must have failed 50,000 times. I must have had more brain embolisms, everything, you name it.
Ultimately, this dysfunctional pattern of thinking snowballs to where the patient oftentimes become housebound.
As a father, I couldn't do anything with my son. I never took him to a baseball game. I never took him to the beach. As a matter of fact, up until 2 years ago, I was 19 years old before I went to the beach again and swam in the ocean.
How many hide behind closed doors when their anxiety and panic can be treated? New medications and therapies are helping millions conquer their fears and restore their lives. Discover why there's hope and there's healing next on Today's Health.
Some things about panic disorder are very clear: the symptoms, the attacks, the anxiety. But what isn't well understood is the cause. What's going on inside the body that triggers the panic and prolongs the anxiety? The answer to that question is the key to successful treatment.
What causes a panic attack? During a panic attack, the body goes through some very extreme behavior. But why? What's causing this reaction? And what can we do to stop it?
In terms of causes, there's a lot of speculation. It may be an abnormal brain area called the locus coeruleus, which may be overproducing norepinephrine or related compounds, neurotransmitters, which cause a person to be anxious.
We know from genetic studies, from twin studies, adoption studies, that there are very powerful genetic factors that lead to the development of various anxiety disorders, so that no matter what your life experience, based on your inherited biology, you might be more prone to a panic attack or obsessive compulsive disorder.
Some theories point to a malfunction in the person's fight or flight instinct. Everyone has a threshold to accept perceived threats until a certain point. Then instinct takes over and the body reacts. Some experts feel that panic may be triggered in persons with a hypersensitive threshold to perceived external threats.
There are laboratory, if you will, mechanisms, procedures for inducing a panic attack in people who are prone to panic attacks. Procedures that involve breathing certain concentrations of carbon dioxide, that in certain people who are prone to panic attacks can bring them on in the laboratory and then they can be studied.
Presently, we're more advanced in the treatment of panic disorder simply because we don't have clear-cut biologic determinants or actual gene that we can say is the cause of a panic disorder.
Medications shown to be effective include benzodiazepines and also antidepressants, both called tricyclic type of antidepressants and the serotonin reuptake inhibitors.
There's a great deal of research in pharmacology at this point to find more effective and medications that are not addictive to help us in the treatment of panic disorders.
We know what panic disorder can do to a person's life. The disease can almost completely disable them and isolate them from the outside world. Hopefully, researchers will soon identify the cause so that they can discover the cure.
Logging on the internet may actually be good for your health, especially if you visit our Today's Health homepage at www.bstar.com. You can get more information on any subject we cover, and there are even some extras waiting for you. No one wants to live in a state of constant anxiety, but the worry that a panic attack could strike at any time can start to dominate your thoughts and intrude upon your life. Fortunately, you don't have to live in fear. There's hope and there's help.
You are not alone. That's the first thing to remember if you think you're suffering from panic disorder. Too many people who have the disease are afraid to admit it and get help. That's a tragedy because help exists and it works.
We had to try to get through this because he had to have a job. He had to try to help support his family even with this problem. And when he had to do something where it was involved of driving distances, it would threaten his job eventually.
I wasn't ready to be helped. See, that was half the battle. I wasn't ready to be helped. Until you're ready, it's just like anything else in life. Until you're ready to do it, they can put a gun in your head, you're not going to do it.
Oftentimes, when we're dealing with a behavioral problem, a lot of thinking was, well, you should be able to pull yourself up by the bootstraps, but that isn't always the case.
The treatments for persistent anxiety include medications and various types of psychotherapy. Behavioral therapies called cognitive therapies, psychodynamic psychotherapy, in particular brief forms of treatment. Some of the older medications used to treat persistent anxiety were the benzodiazepines.
The main downside to the benzodiazepine anti-anxiety drugs are that sometimes they can be over-sedating or sometimes they can be addictive.
The SSRIs, which is a newer class of agents called selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, may treat anxiety through their effects on blocking serotonin reuptake. We're now having even drugs which are just not serotonin reuptake inhibitors, but work on specific serotonin subtypes of serotonin, and then also have a better, probably, side effect profile to treat anxiety and depression.
While medication can help control feelings of anxiety and the onset of a panic attack, psychotherapy and behavioral therapy can help the patient readjust to the world and venture out again.
He was only going to give me medication that was only going to do enough where the medication now was not the power. I had to be the powerful one. And slowly but surely I started doing things more and more. And eventually anxiety disappeared.
A health professional may be right around the corner, but if you live in constant fear of a panic attack, it can seem like the other end of the earth. While pulling in your boundaries probably won't calm your anxiety, reaching out for treatment probably will.
What frightens you? People with panic disorder often associate their panic attacks with the locations or situations where they occur. They can begin to fear and avoid certain places, crowds, or social occasions. There's a name for these irrational fears that can take over their lives: phobias.
Phobias. They can grip a person like a psychic python that constricts their life tighter and tighter in its coils until they are completely confined.
One form of a panic attack is what we call a panic attack with agoraphobia, okay? And a panic attack with agoraphobia, the person afflicted with this becomes so disabled that they socially isolate, avoid responsibilities. It really affects their quality of life.
Your fear is not the fear of walking outside or dying. What it actually is a fear of fear itself. It's a fear of the anxiety. But what you do when you have the anxiety disorder is that you actually use it. It becomes an instrument. It did for me. If I didn't want to do something, okay, I didn't have to do something. I was anxious. I really became anxious. You would become anxious. It's the fear. It's nothing else. There's nothing wrong with you. What's going to happen, though, if you stay this way the rest of your life, you're going to die with never having to live. But for anyone that's out there that has anxiety disorders that think they can't beat it, they're wrong. Because all those years I didn't live. Here I am, I'm going to be 46 years old, and I feel like I'm 18. I'm starting all over again. I don't miss a weekend going down to the beach. I don't miss getting into the water. I don't miss fishing. I get physical. It's just so incredible to be alive again.
Panic disorder is often associated with depression and phobias. All of these disorders can progressively destroy your quality of life. That's why early detection is so important. If you intervene early, you can often control the disease before it controls you.
Panic took control and nearly destroyed a promising future. But this time, the disease didn't win. Meet a survivor and hear about the battle with panic disorder firsthand from the front lines when we return on Today's Health.
Anxiety, depression, panic attacks, and phobias all add up to panic disorder, and they can completely devastate a perfectly normal life. Right now, about 3 million people in this country are affected, but numbers don't tell the whole story. Only a person can.
I do remember times of being absolutely petrified, not wanting to walk into school, not wanting to go outside, not wanting to meet new kids. I would not get on an airplane. And that was probably the first and most pronounced, obvious panic attack I'd had, and they literally had to pick me up and carry me on the plane. I would also have panic attacks when I was in large groups of people, in an auditorium, in a movie theater. I was in the advertising and graphics department of a large corporation, and I would find myself anxious and not sleeping the night before any kind of a large meeting. Oh, I became phobic. At one point I showed my artwork. I did art shows. I stopped showing my artwork because of the crowds. In fact, this led into a long-term, very chronic depression. I was tired of the depression. I was tired of the crying bouts. I was tired of not being able to answer why I was depressed. It was part of what ruined my marriage. I would say I've officially tried to seek and decided to seek some professional help when I could see my personal life just basically falling apart. I had no control. When I finally did get some professional help, one of the first things the doctor asked me to do was a family history. I had a family history on my mother's side of suicidal depression, manic depressiveness. It made a big difference in how I viewed myself, because I could realize there probably is a genetic reason for all of this. I went for weekly therapy, and that was paramount. After the background and workup and logging of my life for about 2 weeks, the doctor did prescribe an antidepressant for me. And it was just an amazing transition. Right now, my life is about as normal as it's ever been. I can make an appointment and take my car in to get fixed. I can make an appointment and go to the doctor. I can make an appointment and take the dog to the vet. Don't be afraid to go seek help. Don't be miserable. If in your life you have a depression or an anxiety problem or a fear, a phobia that is affecting any other part of your life, any part of your life, it needs to be handled before it gets too out of hand.
Fear can be a merciless warden, but anxiety and panic do not have to force your life into a state of confinement. If you find yourself a captive of panic disorder, you're not alone and you're not crazy. You may have a very serious disease that can be treated. For more information on any of our stories, visit our internet website at www.vstar.com. I'm Faith Daniels. Join us again next time as we get right to the heart of matters affecting your life on Today's Health.
To purchase a complete written transcript or a videotaped copy of this or any edition of Today's Health, write to this address or call 1-800-877-7769.
This has been a presentation of 5 Star Productions USA, which is solely responsible for its editorial content.